Thank you, everyone. You can be seated. Thank you. Mic on. Good evening, everybody. I would like to welcome members and members of the public to the 29th November 2023 Full Council. Can I ask members, when speaking, to speak directly into the microphone? This will enable members and members of the public to hear. Can I remind members and members of the public to place their mobile phones to silent and to stand where possible when speaking? Can I remind members to remain seated at the end of the meeting until I have risen to conclude the meeting? Can I also remind those members who wish to speak this evening to keep their hands up until acknowledged by the Chief Executive Officer? To remind members the meeting is being live streamed and we welcome the members of the public in the gallery watching and listening to the council meeting tonight. I would like to remind all members of the council's adopted code of conduct for councillors, which you all agreed to and are expected to adhere to. I will remind members that I will not tolerate inappropriate behaviour or discourtesy in this chamber. Members should be respectful of each other and behave properly in conducting the council's business. If a member continues to disregard my ruling on matters and causes a disturbance or behaves improperly, I will, as the chair, suspend the meeting this evening. October's meeting run efficiently and effectively, and I would hope that this meeting would run just as effectively. I would like to ask the Reverend Darren Barlow to lead us in prayer, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Of all the months of the year, November seems to be a time for pausing, looking back, and remembering. First there comes All Saints, followed by All Souls, occasions that remind us of those who've gone before us. And there's Guy Fawkes Night, which is very much part of British folklore, reminding us of a long-distant plot against Parliament that very sadly reflected the religious tensions of that time. Next there comes Armistice Day and Remembrance Sunday, when we as a community and nation recall the sacrifices of so many in the 2 world wars and other conflicts that have followed and still continue to this day. So much to remember, so much to learn from, so much that calls us to build upon for the future as we consider and learn from the past. And so as the full council meets this evening, we commit ourselves to remember and learn from the past, to work together in the present for the common good, and to strive for all that is good and best as we look for the future. And so a short prayer. We thank you, O God, for our collective and individual memories of the past. Help us to learn lessons so that we may strive to make the present and the future the very best that it can be. Amen.
Thank you, Darren. I think you're going to leave us early tonight. You've got long to do. But, oh, sorry. Pretend. Yeah. Bye-bye, and thank you for coming. No, I didn't quite mean it like that, but right. I know it's the pantomime season, John, but I didn't mean it rudely. I have received apologies from Councillor Collins and Councillor Rapier. Are there any other apologies for absence tonight? Yes, Councillor Muldooney, thank you. Everyone else is present. The minutes. It's item 2, and I move that the minutes of the meeting of the 25th of October 2023 of the Council be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Thank you, Leader. And is any member in disagreement with the accuracy of those minutes? No? Thank you very much. These minutes are approved. Thank you. Item 3. I have not agreed to any matters of urgent items coming before us this evening. Item 4. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest to be made? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in item 12 as an employee of the Byports World. I shall leave the chamber for that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Announcements on behalf of myself and the Leader of the Council. But before I invite the Leader of the Council to speak, I would just like to take a moment and remember Thurrock's Fallen of World War II, which is printed on page 7 of your agenda. Richardson, Percy. Wilkinson, Douglas. Smith, Alfred. Argent, John. Hammond, Sydney. Merrifield, Victor. Gillingham, Thomas. Crooks, Leonard. Williamson, Morris. I will now invite the Leader to make his announcements. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd like to thank the government for the £314,000 for fixing potholes, and also, as Reverend Barlow just mentioned, the borough this month, along with the rest of the country, remembered the fallen on Remembrance Day. I was honoured to attend the service at Grays, but I know across the borough other members attended their own services. I'd also like to welcome the planning permission being given to the youth zone, which is a fabulous opportunity for our youth in the borough to have a first-class facility when it's built, providing all sorts of facilities. And finally, I'd like to remind members that whilst Grays had their Christmas switch on the last couple of days, across the borough, I'm sure we'll all be attending various Christmas switch-ons. I know I will be in South Ockenden on Friday evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. And on behalf of myself, for those of you who laid wreaths on my behalf, thank you so much. And it was really lovely to see so many of you out and remembering those who had fallen in the war. And as I said, it's not just about remembering those who went and didn't return, but it's remembering those who went and did return, never to be the same. So it's really matters. Thank you. Right, item number 6, questions for the members of the public. I will now take questions from the members of the public. 3 questions have been submitted and accepted by the monitoring officer. These are set out on page 19 of the agenda. Mrs. Hattle is unable to attend this evening, so a written response will be provided to her. The next one question was received following the deadline for receipts of questions, but it failed to actually meet that deadline. For the benefit of the recording of this meeting, I would ask that the questionnaire read out their questions when I ask to do so. I should also like to inform the questionnaire that any supplementary question they may ask should not take the form of a statement and must be related to the original question. So, question 1, good evening, Mr. Perrin. Hope you are well. Please make your way, you are already there, to the public speaker microphone and read out your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is the council, despite financial difficulties, able to ensure that all children in its care will have a safe and happy Christmas?
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Perrin, for your question. Yes, indeed, it is definitely a time for children to make sure they're safe and be happy. This year, the Thurrock Council have continued to support local children in need through our Christmas gift campaign, which I believe is in something like its 8th year now in one form or another. But this year it's been run by the Children's Services team, and it's slightly different as they've been asking for contributions from staff at the council and local businesses rather than residents. The gift campaign is also being combined with the Thurrock's Children Looked After Awards and Care Leavers dinner event, Christmas dinner event, sorry. The team have worked hard to ensure the Christmas gifts and donations received are provided for children who are in need and children without access to public funds and care leavers. We've currently received over £11,000 in monetary donations and over £1,000 in gift donations. Some of the local businesses who have kindly contributed include Impulse Leisure, H.W. Wilson, South Essex Insurance, DG International, DP World and Amazing Solutions, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart. But just to add, Mr. Perrin, yes, there are financial difficulties, but the council has not removed any funding from our foster carers and the essential placement supporting and caring for our children who are looked after. In fact, there has been an increase in the fostering allowance this year in recognition of the cost of living increases. So I finish by saying, as in other years, we do everything we can to ensure our children who are looked after have a happy and safe Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Mr. Perring, would you like to ask your first supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a question, but I am pleased with the councillor's reply, and I would also like to take this opportunity to wish all councillors and all members of the council a very happy Christmas and a prosperous and safe New Year.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perring, and I'm sure we all wish you exactly the same. Thank you. I would now like to ask Mrs. Ramadine, please make your way to the public speaker microphone and read out your question.
What plans have this council got for providing social facilities in East Tilbury, West Tilbury and Linford, now that a large number of the older taxpayers in those areas are unable to travel to the rest of the borough without incurring large expenses? Their taxes have paid towards the facilities for all of Thurrock for years, yet they're now excluded from almost all of them.
Thank you. Councillor Maney, Councillor Ben Maney, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms Randemi, for your question. Madam Mayor, I'm probably not going to be able to give a particularly fulsome answer here because, first of all, I'm not the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, and traditionally, if the Council were to provide these kind of services, it would be adult social care and not the regeneration or transportation services that would. So my knowledge of these services is not particularly detailed, but I'm sure my colleague, the Cabinet Member with responsibility for adult social care, will be able to give more information to Ms Ramdeni at a later stage. From my personal knowledge, and as I say, not as a Cabinet Member, I do know that there are already services provided in East Tilbury for the benefit of the local community. Although I would stress, I do think we have to be clear, as with the bus service, they're not council services per se. It's not a statutory service, so it's not necessarily the council's responsibility to provide social facilities or social services. And I think the private sector or the voluntary sector always provides them much better. But I do know that East Tilbury benefits from the East Tilbury Hub, from which a number of community services are provided, and our local area coordinators also operate from the hub, and their role, one of their roles is specifically to reach out to people who are isolated or who might benefit from social facilities in the area. And the council also, Madam Mayor, as you will know, funds the CVS, which is specifically there to support the voluntary sector and to help people set up voluntary organisations. So I'm sure if Miss Remdeni wants to volunteer her time and help provide social facilities in East Tilbury, they'd be more than happy to support her in that endeavour. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ben-Maini. Miss Ramdini, would you like to ask a further supplementary?
Yep, maybe he'll be able to answer this one because this is about the robust consultation that he carried out. So the elderly residents, again, of East Tilbury and West Tilbury and Linford haven't got access to even a decent-sized supermarket, instead having to rely on a local shop where prices can be up to 30% higher than the larger supermarkets. If they want to get to the nearest bus stop to use their statutory concessionary bus passes, they first have to pay either £15 return to Stanford-le-Hope in a taxi, or, if they can manage to get to the station, pay £5.10 return on the train. This council has ensured that the elderly taxpayers of East Tilbury, in the midst of a cost of living crisis, are financially disadvantaged, having to pay a large extra amount just to access basic facilities like shops, hospitals or social clubs that were free to them until September this year. I was aware that Councillor Maney would say that the council isn't responsible for people's finances or social facilities. You made it very clear in September that you don't think this council needs to be socially responsible. However, you must have realised during your robust consultation what the financial consequences of withdrawing the funding for a socially necessary bus service would be. What specific part of that consultation considered the financial impact on the most vulnerable taxpayers in the borough when you made the decision to isolate them from the services and facilities so freely accessed by other Thurrock residents?
Thank you. Councillor Maney, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would. I've already spoke to the consultation and how robust it was, and indeed, when it was considered by the Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee, they too heralded it as an example of how we should do consultations. So I don't accept or recognise that there were any failings at all in the consultation. It was very robust. It made clear that the council doesn't have a statutory duty to provide these services. And I think when I announced the decision, I made very clear, and I will say again tonight, we know that the decision will have an impact on some. We're not denying that. It's been said at many occasions that the decision to withdraw the subsidy, and to be clear, we withdrew the subsidy. We didn't withdraw the bus services. Any operator is free to run a bus through East Tilbury or Linford or West Tilbury anytime they like. They don't need the council's permission. It's always been acknowledged that a small number of people will be disadvantaged, but there is simply no escaping the fact that the cost of the services were unsustainable and were placing a burden on the council's finances. Indeed, it actually created an in-year pressure when the subsidy was still in place, because the operators requested an extra £100,000 in year, which was unbudgeted for. And that gives you an example of how the services were simply unsustainable. And I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree. I agree that it has had an impact, a negative impact for a small number of people, but there's almost this ignorance, overlooking of the fact that the services had a very real monetary cost, and that simply was not sustainable. And, you know, we can close East Tilbury Library, we can cut street cleaning. What frontline services do you suggest the council cuts to keep providing bus services which we don't have a duty to provide? Because that is the reality. It is money, taxpayers' money, that keeps these services operating, and something else would have to have been cut in order to fund the bus services in future years. It was the right decision, and I'm afraid we'll just have to agree to disagree.
Thank you, Councillor Maney.
Can I just say that wasn't actually that wasn't my question.
Hang on. I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Hang on. Just one moment. Thank you, Councillor Maney. Now, Mrs. Randomini. Sorry, my throat is going. Ramdini, can you just clarify what you were saying?
Yep, that wasn't actually my question. I could pretty much say off by heart Councillor Maney's responses to the bus and all the rest of it. This isn't about the bus service. We know that's gone. My question was, what specific part of your consultation considered the financial impact on the taxpayers, the vulnerable taxpayers of East Tilbury? It's a fairly simple question. As it was so robust, I thought you would have that information to hand that you could say, we did X, Y and Z to consider the financial impact on the most vulnerable members of society. I know the bus is gone.
Thank you. I don't know if you wish to reply, Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the point of a consultation is for people to give their views, and that's what we did. We carried out a consultation. So if people responding were of the view that it was going to leave them financially disadvantaged, it's for them to tell us that. We don't carry out a consultation and say, please give us these answers. It was a consultation. We asked people, do they rely on these services, what they rely on them for, what would be the consequence of it being withdrawn, and it was for users to tell us, not for us to tell them the answers they are to give us. That is a point. That's not a consultation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Would you like to return to your seat? Thank you.
He's not going to answer the question, so I may as well.
No, sorry. Petitions from members of the public and councillors. Please be advised that in accordance with the councillors' petition scheme, no notices of petitions have been received. Update report in respect of those petitions presented at council and council officers. This report can be found on pages 21 to 22 of the agenda and is information on the status of all these petitions handed in at council meetings and the council officers. Item 9, appointments to committees and outside bodies, statutory and other panels. Leader, do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's just one amendment to make, and that's to remove Councillor Spillman from General Services Committee and replace him with Councillor Barry Johnson.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kent, would you like to? Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Spate, as a spokesman for Non-Political Alliance of Independent Councillors, do you wish to make any changes to any of your appointments on behalf of the independent councillors?
Yes, indeed, Madam Mayor. Councillor Byrne would like to return to the Planning Committee, where there is an allocated place for him.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Is any member in disagreement with the nominations made this evening? No. Okay, Councillor Byrne, you can return back to the planning. Thank you. Update, item 10, update annual pay policy 2023 to 2024. We have about 15 minutes for this item. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce the report that can be found on pages 23 to 42? You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It shouldn't take 5 minutes. As you know, we agreed the annual pay policy in January this year, and in September we also agreed the increase for senior staff. What this updated pay policy statement does is that the national negotiations for local government pay have been concluded with an agreed increase of £1,925 or 3.88% if higher, and this represents a higher increase than applied by the council on the pay points up to the top grade of F. So in accordance with our collective agreement, we are asking permission to accept this NJC award to go along with the national agreement, basically. So I'll just leave that there and go for questions.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Snell. Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, we support the recommendation, support the report, but as far as questions are concerned, I just want to raise two things. The first is on the pay multiples, where we're told that the mean salary of the council, the difference between the mean salary of the council and the pay of the highest paid member of staff, the chief executive, is 5.2 for the mean salary, which is £37,258, and 5.6 for the median salary, which is £34,631. That's, of course, worked out on a chief executive salary of £193,000. That's not the reality that we live in at the moment. We live in a reality where the chief executive, the managing director, commissioner, is on a salary of £286,000, which means that the median ratio is 7.6, and the mean ratio is 7.6 and the median is 8.25, which is the highest it's ever been for this authority. And I think we need to be aware of that and we need to keep it in mind. The second thing, and the question is that the mandatory gender pay reporting, as from April 2017, we are supposed to have reported that every year. This authority has never reported that, certainly not in this report. Can I ask when we will start reporting the mandatory gender pay gap?
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Snell, would you like to reply?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. The Chief Executive pay, obviously in relation to the current MDC, that is dictated by government, so we pay what the government tells us we have to pay for that, and I do agree that's higher than it should be normally. But once we revert back, once we are out of the Commissioner's remit, then that will revert back to the regular pay salary. In terms of the pay gender gap, I agree with you. I don't have the answer to that right here now, but I will take that up and we'll come back to that at a future meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Snell, do you wish to sum up?
I just recommend go to the recommendations and hopefully we can agree to accept the pay award. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Do all members agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Item 11, Senior Management Appointments. Leader, would you please introduce the report that can be found on pages 43 to 48? You have 5 minutes to speak on this subject.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the first things I was asked to consider on becoming leader was the reorganisation of the senior management team and how we were going to attract the right people to help us drive the changes to how this council operates. The appointment of Tyle Hill was the start of the process, with both myself and the Chief Executive giving interviews to the MJ Journal, and with both of us recording promotional videos to attract the best people to Thurrock. Once the applications had been received, we went through a robust process involving interviews by the recruitment agency and then a series of 3 interviews held here in Thurrock involving councillors, employees, business people and other stakeholders within the borough. After which the subcommittee of the General Services Committee, which consisted of the leaders and deputy leaders of the 2 main parties, considered all the responses along with their interviews and took into account the comments and thoughts from the stakeholder panels. Delighted now to bring to full council the conclusion of this work. Before members is the report for them to note, containing the details of 3 candidates we wish to appoint. Julie Emma McLaughlin as Executive Director of Place, Daniel Fennick as Executive Director of Corporate Services, and Alex Powell, Assistant Chief Executive. Details of each candidate were circulated to members via a briefing, circulated via members' briefing recently, and on your desks in front of you, you'll see another copy of this. In the report before you, there's more details of the process and of each of the candidates. Madam Mayor, I'm really pleased to recommend this report to the Council, and I'm happy to take any questions. But before I do so, I'd like to invite the Chief Commissioner, Gavin Jones, to say a few words.
Thank you, Leader. Gavin, would you like to make some comments, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Leader, and good evening, Council. Commissioners are very pleased to act on the recommendations of the General Services Committee and to use our powers to make the appointments and for the Council to note the appointments. I would add to the Leader's comment, it was a very vigorous set of processes and very pleased to see the work of the stakeholder panels as well, which also played a major part in the recruitment. The letters of the appointments are indeed published and now live on the Commissioners section of the Thurrock Council website. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Jones. Councillor Kent, would you like to comment? Thank you. Would any member like to speak on this report? Each member can have up to 4 minutes. Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome the appointment of the new directors. I sat on one of the stakeholder panels that considered the Assistant Chief Executive, and I thought Alex was an outstanding candidate, attracting someone from the very upper echelons of Department for Communities, Housing and Local Government, now DLUC, someone whose formative years were spent in Thurrock and now wants to come here to help address some of the issues. That is a very inspiring story. I do want to constructively offer some challenge to the process that we underwent. When we went through the stakeholder exercise, the great emphasis was put on we are attempting to build the senior leadership team. We are attempting to help build the support that Dr. Smith needs as we go through the process of fixing the investment impairment and moving us back out of the current difficulty. The concern I have with this narrative is that it presumes that the years 1997 to 2017 were entirely financially stable years, and all we need to do is address the investment impairment. The reality is, for anyone who has been in administration, certainly anyone who has had responsibility for social care in Cabinet, they know that Thurrock was heading towards being Thurrock Borough Social Care Authority. We were heading towards only being able to afford social care within the next decade, maybe 2. So the new senior leadership team, I think we have a number of excellent candidates, but if their mission statement is purely to help us fix the current difficulty and essentially roll back the clock pre-October 2017, then that is essentially a recipe to put us probably 5 minutes to midnight on the doomsday clock rather than a few seconds before midnight on the doomsday clock. What we need for this new senior leadership team that I think is starting to look very robust and provide Dr. Smith with the support that he needs, rather than acting like Thurrock is a going concern, we need serious lobbying of His Majesty's Government in regards to council tax reform. We need serious lobbying in regard to not needing local government devolution, but needing local government reform, i.e. deleting several hundred councils and several thousand councillors. And we need to truly consider what type of authority the senior leadership team is going to advocate that we are. Do we think we should still be the unitary we were created in 1997? And I would suggest that is a financially illiterate approach. So as these new directors join the upper echelons of the council, I am hoping that the position we can craft out for them is that they are not coming here as a pretend and extend exercise. Thurrock is not a going concern. We need a serious reconsideration of the type of council that we are. And if we do that, I believe that Alex, Daniel and Julie Emma can come here and they can be a part of an authority that has got a serious future. But that future, as some of the conversations of the stakeholder panel highlighted, cannot be simply dealing with the present difficulties, because we've got into the present difficulties, i.e. the investment impairment, because of the last set of difficulties. The investment strategy happened for a reason, and it was the burden of social care for an authority our size and with our demography. These are the structural issues that we need the new senior leadership team to address, and not simply address the issues of today.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. Councillor Redsall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, very much. Having sat on the interviews, as many of us did in here, I thought they were the very best that we could find, and they came across really, really well, and it was good to see that most of us were singing off the same song sheet. And all I can say is they were really exceptional. At their interviews, they were really exceptional. There were some that weren't, and some that I don't think even wanted the job anyway. But these three were really good, and everybody seemed to be and feel the same. I, for one, when they come into Thurrock, and it would have been nice to have seen them here tonight, actually, but that may be the wrong place to come. But I think that when they settle in, I will be watching, for one, we'll be watching them very closely, and I hope they produce what they said they would do. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Spate, did you have your hand up? Yeah, thank you. I was going to remind you, councillors, it was just pure coincidence we recognised you want to speak, Councillor Redsill. If you can make sure the Chief Executive always does see your hands, that would be good. Thank you. Councillor Spate, sorry.
Thank you. Like the two previous speakers, and indeed Councillor Jeffries, I played a small part in this selection process, which was very illuminating and indeed encouraging. I'm incredibly disappointed that we've not been able to find an appropriate finance officer, and I wish everybody Godspeed in trying to get that sorted out as quickly as possible, because that is a really key appointment. What I would like to do is echo what Councillor Holden has just said, is that this is a fresh start for this council. We've spent a lot of time arguing about the past, and we've spent a lot of time blaming everybody else, and some of that blame is deserved. I think I sort of echo that going forwards, we need to look to be a new Thurrock. And I really welcome the fact that the three successful candidates all showed the capacity to think outside the box, to do things differently. And I look forward to them bringing their ideas. And the fact that they've come through a process that involves this council, that involves the workforce of this council, that involves the stakeholders of this council who came and took part and gave their views and listened to what was said, is really encouraging. It was people working collaboratively and with a sense of purpose to be positive. So I just echo what James said, and I hope that this chamber, as we go forward, manages to drop some of the animosity, drop some of the stupidity that we've seen, and that we all work together and that we get behind these three new officers and others who will undoubtedly come in, because Thurrock's not quite dead yet, and I look forward to helping revive it, as these three people will be doing.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. The leader, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Holden makes some really valid points and some important questions, and I think it's certainly something that we should look at the appropriate time in the future. Councillor Spate, I agree it is disappointing that we couldn't find a Chief Finance Officer, and I do look forward to us actually finding that right person in the very near future. Apart from that, Madam Mayor, I just recommend approval of the report.
Thank you, Leader. So I'll now proceed to the recommendations that the Council to note the following appointments. Julie Emma McLaughlin as Executive Director of Place, Daniel Fennick as Executive Director of Corporate Services, which is the Monitoring Officer, and Alex Powell as Assistant Chief Executive. Do members note all these recommendations? Thank you, members. Item 12, London Gateway Logistics. Oh, sorry, I'd forgotten Councillor Kelly was moving. Thank you. London Gateway Logistics Park Local Development Order. Councillor Ben Maney, would you please introduce the report that can be found on pages 49 to 60, and you have 5 minutes to speak on this subject.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm sure you will share my view that DP World London Gateway is a vital asset in our borough, one which has and will continue to help drive the growth and prosperity that we all seek. As a council, we should do all we can to encourage the employment and economic benefits that the port offers. Madam Mayor, development within London Gateway Logistics Park has since 2013 been subject to a local development order, which is considered the simplest and most effective planning apparatus for the site. The existing local development order will expire at the end of this month, and whilst work has begun on the preparation of a second draft order, this will not be ready for adoption this year. As matters stand, this would mean there is no further consent for development at the logistics park. DP London Gateway has recently commenced discussion with the council over potential plans for the development of up to 85,000 square metres of floor space within the logistic park. There is, however, no prospect that development could begin before the expiry of the existing order, and delaying the plans until the second order is in place could jeopardise the plans and the economic benefits it would ensure. As a solution, it is proposed that a revision of LDO 1 take place, referred to in the report as LDO 1.5, which would allow for plans to come forward. This is effectively a time-limited extension of the existing LDO specific to the site under discussion. Madam Mayor, it's not the role of full council this evening to agree the revised order or indeed the second LDO when it is ready for determination. Authority for this should rest with the Council's Planning Committee, and members are asked in the recommendations to delegate authority to the committee, whilst also noting the progress being made in preparing LDO 2. Madam Mayor, I move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Councillor Kent, would you like to make some comments, please?
Madam Mayor, if we can, I'd like Councillor Watson to respond.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, would you like to respond on behalf of your leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney. So I'm slightly disappointed that we're going into an LDO 1.5 from an LDO 1 but we are where we are. We should have had a concurrent going into an LDO 2. I'm in favour of the recommendations that it goes to the Planning Committee. On the caveat, can you please reassure me that we will have a planning lawyer that will be sitting in planning to go through the conditions that I'm hoping that is going to be in LDO 1.5 and LDO 2. So if you can guarantee that for me, that will be brilliant. And can we ensure that the planning lawyer actually knows about LDOs so they are well equipped to answer questions of the planning on the Planning Committee? Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Is there other members who'd like to speak? Councillor Massey. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Maney, for your report. On the wards and communities affected, we see Corridon, Fobbin, Stamford East, Corridon Town, Homestead, Stamford Hope West. One ward that I think that should be on there was obviously going to be East Tilbury. We're already quite an isolated ward, and as the London Gateway gets up to more development there and the more berths come online and more industrial space, the train gates are down more and more and more, which leaves us quite isolated and also leaves at risk of our emergency services not being able to make it into the village. So I would just ask, through you, Councillor Maney, working with the Director of Place, that East Tilbury be treated the same as other wards affected going forward into the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Councillor Maney, I'm going to wait till the end and let all answer questions. Are you happy to do that? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Arnold, Deborah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 52.3.6, it says S106 obligation cannot be required under an LDO. However, this does not prevent S106 obligation being offered by the developer and negotiated with the LPA. I welcome the expansion of the port and the prosperity that will bring to the borough. But as you continue to build your successful relationship with DP World, Councillor Maney, could I ask that you kind of make me a promise for Corringham and Fobbing that they will start to expand their thinking about the roads that are affected around the port, so we go a bit further than the Manor Way. As you know, quite often The large container lorries are now cutting through the village of Fobbing along the high road, which is actually weight restricted, and then sometimes taking that shortcut at the bottom through a conservation area where we can ill afford those types of vehicles to be travelling. So some kind of help for the village of Fobbing from DP World would be extremely welcomed.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome the fact that we're working very closely with DP World London Gateway, and I commend the company for its commitment to the borough, as epitomised by their £1.3 million donation to Open Zone, which was announced yesterday. It shows that they are committed not just to running lorries through the streets of this borough, but also to helping grow. And we're going to need their help and support, and particularly in helping our young people. However, that comes with a caveat of responsibility. People in Stanford-le-Hope have gone through the last few months, well, virtually all of this year, having to suffer the consequences of the piling operation, which has been extremely inconvenient for a lot of people. It's had people being woken up in the middle, and it really is almost the middle of the night because the operation is dependent upon the tides. To their credit, DP World have said they could have planned things better, they should have had more foresight, and we basically had to sit and suffer through the construction of Berth 4. And they pledged and promised, because I obviously rang up and complained when I got requests from my ward members and other residents in the area. So we do need to keep a watching brief on everything that goes there, because the problem was that when I spoke to enforcement, when I spoke to the Environment Agency, just asking for a little bit of pressure and a little bit of leverage, it was, oh, we can't do anything. And that is really unfair. If you're a family living in a home near that port, being woken up at 6 o'clock and your whole family is woken up by bang, bang, bang that goes on all day, disturbing not just your health, but your mental health well-being, it is really unfair. So we need at all times to work with DP World and keep our enforcement weather eye on them. And it should be built into any agreement that we make that this council still has a watchdog role. Just to pick up a little bit on the point made by Councillor Arnold, I regularly attend the forum meetings in Stamford, which includes Corringham and Fobbing and whatever. And I can say that DP World are aware of the problem with lorries and the rat run through Fobbing. And indeed, they attend those meetings on a regular basis and openly discuss and acknowledge the problems and come up with solutions. Their problem tends to be, more often than not, actually getting that solution through this council. So, you know, we all need to work together. But I do welcome this. I think it's really important, but it cannot be at the absolute expense of, as I say, the health, the well-being, and everything involving the communities of Stamford, Corringham and Fobbing, and indeed East Tilbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Councillor Polly.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. In agreement with my other councillors, we do welcome the commitment of DP World to the borough. Earlier on, when Councillor Holden was speaking about council tax reforms, that I remember with these big businesses within Thurrock, looking back, I know we're trying to look forward, but I remember a ward member from West Thurrock, a gentleman by the name of Rob Williams, when Lakeside arrived into Thurrock, he lobbied and requested that business rates were, a higher percentage of business rates were actually given to this council because of the impact that although it brings benefits, it also brings arduous problems with it, such as traffic problems. The same with DP World. I think back in the day when it was being proposed, I put a motion for a higher percentage of its business rates to be accredited to this council. The traffic generated is a problem for the whole of borough. I appreciate that it's immediate impact on the local villages, but a lot of the vehicles travel along the A13 up to the junction, into the west to junction 3031. I just wonder, with government's change of thinking on HS2 about some national infrastructure projects, we could perhaps look at doing something about road to rail to try and use different methods of transport to try and move these containers. I'd like to see that going forward. And as Councillor Spate has said, DP World are very good at engaging with the council, and I'm sure that we could have some discussions with them. But of course that will have another effect on East Tilbury, but I think there is another rail line within the port that might be able to service the freight better. But so thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Polly. Councillor Maney, would you like to sum up? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I thank everybody for their contributions? This is an important item, and as I say, there's some very valid points raised there. Taking Councillor Watson's point, first of all, in relation to legal advice, I would always like to think that the committee is adequately supported by legal officers. I'll certainly take away her comment and seek assurance. It's not personally my role to ensure that there is legal advice at the committee, but I would absolutely share her concerns if the committee did not feel, as I think it has done in the past, that it's adequately supported. We should expect that at any meeting, but in relation to something as important to this, very valid point, the committee shouldn't be making decisions unless it feels it is fully supported and has the right legal officers in place, and I'm sure that's also heard by officers who will ensure that is the case. Madam Mayor, in relation to surrounding communities and habitations, there is inevitably, I think, going to be some kind of impact from noise and traffic when something as large and impactful as the port comes to town. I mean, that, and so, we can take steps to mitigate that, but there's always going to be some conflict. But it's right that we should do all we can to mitigate that. Some of that's going to involve working in partnership, as we do, and I think we need to make sure we get better at that. Some of it we may be able to try and alleviate via the planning process, but I think I don't think there's any one approach to solving the problem of HGVs, particularly in the impact on the immediate area. The planning committee, if it so decides, can attach conditions to the LDO, which is why I think it is the planning committee that is best placed to consider this. And I think the kind of representations that we've heard tonight should be made to the committee by interested ward members when the matter comes before the planning committee for consideration. The other point I would make is, of course, in a week's time, we will be considering a report on the local plan. The real way to get better infrastructure, better road networks, better road linkage to try and alleviate some of these HGV problems is, of course, to progress the local plan. The council can't solve everything, but if we move our local plan forward, we get the right development in the right places, that brings with it infrastructure, that brings with it revenue to solve some of these problems. The council hasn't got a magic wand. We can't say to DP World, don't drive lorries through these roads. We can add pressure, we can convey messages on behalf of...
just the time.
Okay, I think I've made the point, Madam Mayor. The point I'm making is if we really want to solve these problems, let's get behind the local plan. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. I will now proceed to the recommendations. Do members note and agree to the following recommendations? To note this report, the progress made so far on LDO2 and the future actions processes necessary to bring LDO2 to a position where it is ready to be adopted. 2, to delegate authority on the decision whether or not to adopt LDO2 to the Planning Committee. 3, to delegate authority on the decision whether or not to adopt LD01 2.5 to the Planning Committee. Are we all in agreement? Thank you, members. Right, the next item is item 13, review of members' allowances. Leader, would you please introduce this report that can be found on pages 61 to page 130. You have 5 minutes to speak on this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You might be pleased to know I won't be taking my full 5 minutes on this item. I'd first like to thank the independent review panel for the work that they carried out in constructing this report. After last night's 5-hour mega meeting, finishing gone midnight, I'm sure there's no one that does not feel councillors deserve an allowance that reflects the time commitment to their duties. However, given the position that Thurrock finds itself in, I believe that this is not the right time to give ourselves an increase in our allowance. So this...
Councillor Byrne. Don't need you to clap. Just let the leader speak, please.
I'll take clapping. I don't mind clapping, Madam Mayor. Thank you. So,
I do. Come on.
So this evening, whilst this report is in my name, the Conservative group will not be voting in favour of any rise in our allowances. Quite happy to take questions, Madam.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, would you like to say something on the matter?
Madam Mayor, voting on your own allowance is always one of the most unedifying things that we have to do, particularly unedifying given the situation the council finds itself in. So we agree with the leader of the council, and the Labour group will also be voting against the recommendations. Quite happy if there is anybody who wants to clap. I think it should be encouraged, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. No, they didn't, did they? Would any member like to speak on this subject? No? Would you like to sum up, Councillor, the leader?
No, Madam Mayor, happy to go straight to the vote.
Are we in agreement? Thank you very much, Councillor. Actually, I'm sorry, Council. I've actually didn't read out what you agreed, did I? You all just said yes, and you didn't really know what you were agreeing to. So yeah, but I think for the tape, I ought to just read it. So I'll now proceed to the recommendations. Do members note and agree to the following recommendations? Agree all recommendations presented in the independent Remuneration Panel's report at Appendix 1 and the subsequent scheme of allowances at Appendix 2. The Council implements the recommendations from the municipal year 2024 to 2025. 3. Council agreed to apply 4% to allowances paid in 2022 to 2023 as outlined in Section 3.3 and in accordance with the continued recommendation to index allowances with staff increments. Council note the potential for the IRP to review special responsibility allowances for overview and scrutiny chair and vice chair positions 6 months after introduction of any new structure to ensure importance remuneration. So, as we've all spoken against it, I'm now asking you to reject these recommendations. Yeah, it's all right. I wasn't saying it's all agreed. I was just trying to read it through, and you're all going to reject it. Brilliant. Thank you. I could hear the public go, like that, but hey-ho. Item 14, questions from members. There are 6 questions to the leader and 6 questions to cabinet members and committee chairs. These can be found on pages 131 to 132 of the agenda, please note question 3 to the leader from Councillor Byrne has been withdrawn. One question was received following the deadline for receipts of questions, therefore rejected. I would ask those members who have submitted questions to please read out their question when asked to do so. Question 1 from Councillor Hurrell to the leader. Councillor Hurrell, please read out your question as set out on pages 131 of the agenda this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A recent study by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation reveals that approximately 3.8 million people in the UK experienced extreme poverty/destitution in 2022, including around 1 million children. This is almost 2.5 times the number of adults in 2017 and nearly triple the number of children. Can the leader tell us how many of Thurrock's residents, adults and children, fall into the category of being destitute? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurrell. Councillor Jeffreys, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hurrell, for your question. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation defines destitution as the most severe form of material hardship. In the study, we measure it in 2 ways, which were developed in consultation with members of the public. The first one being lack of access to at least 2 of 6 items needed to meet the most basic physical needs, to stay warm, dry, clean and fed. Basically shelter, food, heating, lighting, clothing, footwear and basic toiletries, because you cannot afford them. 2, extremely low or no income, indicating that you cannot afford the items described above. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation has estimated the percentage of households in destitution in each local authority in the UK. Thurrock is ranked 98th with a rate of 0.99%. It should be noted that the national average is 0.91 and the range is from 0.31 to 2%. According to the most recent census in 2021, the Office of National Statistics, there was 66,377 households in Thurrock. Applying this to the estimate from the survey of the percentage of destitute households and the ratio of children to adults in destitute household, this equates over the period of the year to around 4,600 households. That's approximately 7,300 adults and 2,700 children in destitution in Thurrock. The Thurrock Council has a single point of access to specifically trained financial inclusion officers who offer financial advice and refer on to the appropriate council teams for housing improvements. Their aim is to income maximisation through a combination of benefit optimisation, access to grants and one-off payments, debt solution, budget advice and referral to the floating support. In 2022 to 23, Thurrock Council supported 2,889 households, achieving an income totalling 578,000 for 1,664 households, bringing in an additional average of £350 per household.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Hurrell.
Thank you for the reply. Thank you, Madam Mayor. With the grave financial situation this council finds itself in, is it likely Thurrock will see a higher than average rise in destitution compared to a well-run local authority?
Thank you. Leader.
I would sincerely hope not. I mean, the government provide funding and additional aid for people that are in need, and we've said that we're not cutting any of the statutory responsibilities that we've got. But we've also got a great charity sector here in Thurrock as well that does a great deal of work to help people, and I can't see any of that changing.
Councillor Hurrell.
Thank you for the reply. Thank you, Madam Mayor. With £18.2 million worth of cuts coming next April, would you, as leader of the council, pledge to commit to this famous phrase: the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members? And I don't mean us as members, I mean the public, obviously.
Thank you, Councillor Hurrell, for your... thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hurrell, for your supplementary. Absolutely, and that's why the savings that we've proposed aren't on frontline services. They're in the back offices. We're ensuring that statutory responsibility, statutory duties are still there and people receive the services that they need and that they're entitled to. And I would urge anybody that finds themselves in financial difficulty to come forward and seek the help that is available to everyone.
Thank you, Leader. Question 2 from Councillor Worrell to the Leader.
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam
Worrell,
Mayor.
please read out your question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Jeffries, what is your vision for Thurrock as a place in 5 years' time?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Worrell, for your question. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to lay clear my positive vision for Thurrock and discuss the exciting opportunities we have to unleash for the potential of our borough. We're committed to becoming an enabling council that puts the residents at the heart of every decision. This can mean the council taking the back seat and enabling residents making decisions on how much money is spent in their local areas. We should be the provider of a last resort, not the provider of everything. We have many exceptional things coming to Thurrock. The Grays and Tilbury Town Fund offering levelling up and transformation to these areas. The Thames Freeport will offer jobs and prosperity for the borough to ensure that Thurrock's position as a logistics capital remains. If this council makes the correct decision next week, we begin with the process of bringing forward the local plan, which will not only provide new homes for those who currently can't get one, but will bring much needed infrastructure and opportunity for growth that Thurrock needs. Thurrock has and continues to have a number of challenges it faces, but whether you're doing a 100-metre dash or 100-metre hurdles, you can still get the same end goal, an enabling council that has regenerated while offering high skills and being the logistic capital of Britain.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Worrell, would you like another supplementary?
No supplementary, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Question 3 has been withdrawn, so question 4 from Councillor Byrne to the Leader. Please, Councillor Byrne, please read out your question as set out on pages 131 of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Jeffries, I'm not going to put the dampers on. What I've seen tonight has been a really positive meeting, so why spoil that? And Councillor Spates said it, let's stop the silliness, back the new recruits.
Councillor Byrne,
yep.
I've asked you just to read out your question.
I'm not
I
gonna
don't
ask
need
questions.
a monologue, just read your
I'm not going to
question.
ask questions. I'm just saying tonight's been positive. Let's back the new recruits and put our efforts into rescuing Thurrock. So.
Councillor
No
Byrne,
questions.
just sit down. Councillor Byrne, would you pick up the piece of paper? I do not like littering. Councillor Byrne, can you pick up the paper? That is not the way to behave in council. No, Councillor Byrne, I think you need to apologise for doing that. Councillor, just let common sense take place. I can say something positive, like pick up the paper and stop being so silly. Thank you. Right, so I presume Councillor Byrne does not wish to ask any supplementary or make any more comments. So therefore, I'm going to go to question number 5, Councillor Pearce, to the Leader, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I recently attended a consultation event in Aveley regarding plans for a Purfleet employment hub, a hub which actually is in Aveley, not in Purfleet. The potential applicants publicly claimed they were working to support Council's sports master plan for Bellas Park. Display boards showed the park almost entirely given over to sports pitches. In my view, this directly offends Bellas Park's history and listed heritage. What sports master plan might the applicants be referring to, and what consultation has been made with elected members? especially ward members, to determine whether the council plans align with our political aspirations and meet with the needs of the community we are elected to represent. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Leader, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your question. Councillor Pearce, when I was made aware of this, I, like you, was very concerned because I certainly hadn't seen no master plan. So I did raise it. It would appear that an officer was talking to the developers and gave the impression that there was some sort of master plan. There is no master plan, and I for one, certainly wouldn't want to see Bellas Park completely covered in football pitches. That's not what it's about. So to give us some reassurance that that's not going to happen. Any changes to Bellas Park, any changes to any green and open spaces within the borough must have consultation with residents, must have member engagement, absolutely. So I hope that gives us some reassurance that there is no master plan. There's ideas, but they certainly aren't something that we're taking forward at the moment.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Pearce, would you like to propose a supplementary?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Do you agree that there is a need for a greater political and senior officers' oversight of pre-planning discussion on major applications so that embarrassing situations like this does not arise in the future? Thank you, Madam.
Leader, would you like to respond?
I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't quite hear the first start of your... Were you saying that there should be oversight to planning applications, was it?
I'll read it out again. Do you agree that there is a need for greater political and senior officer oversight of pre-planning discussions on major applications so embarrassing situations like this do not arise in the future?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your supplementary. Absolutely. The people that know what's best for an area are the residents and us, the members, because we talk to members. So, yes, that's something that I would welcome, I hope, with the PAS review, and I hope with the internal review that we're carrying out with, within the department, that's something we would actually start to see.
Councillor Pearce, would you like to ask anything else?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just further, that officers should not solely determine what is best for our parks and open spaces, and that ward members should be consulted on pre-planning stage in future. Thank you.
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, and I would definitely look into members having the ability to look at pre-planning applications. I'll certainly take that away. And as for green and open spaces, I made that point last night, that part of the cost savings that we're doing will include a review of the green and open spaces, and members will play a fundamental part in that review along with our residents.
Thank you, Leader. Question 6 from Councillor Cleon to the Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the portfolio holder shed light on the rationale behind selecting PwC to assist the Council in identifying savings? Considering the awareness of a 10% discount, is there confidence that this represents genuine value for money?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kerrin, for your question. As previously reported, the Council is utilising PwC to assist in identifying savings by building on the work already undertaken. Various assessments were made in coming to a view on the way forward, and the most realistic is to carry out this work using a mix of internal and external resources. It was also considered that the benefit of continuing to utilise PwC would outweigh any alternative procurement, and the level of support was likewise assessed. Given the level of recurrent annual savings planned to be achieved, along with the other benefits of using PwC, the Council is very confident that this represents value for money.
Thank you. Councillor Kieran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that answer, Councillor Jeffries. Within the PwC contract, is there a provision or clause outlining what happens if there is a failure to identify the savings required?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. PwC is a really experienced and knowledgeable company that carries out this kind of work on a regular basis. So I think there'd be considerable reputational damage if anything that they suggested didn't actually work out. So no, I think PwC are doing a good job. They're coming forward with some sensible savings for us. We're putting in place, as we said last night, monthly checks being monitored by officers with actions if slippage starts. As I said last night, there's the upskilling of staff, leaders of the future, so that they can learn from what PwC have recommended and moving forward, they're able to recommend savings that we're able to take.
Thank you, Councillor Kieran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that answer, Councillor Jeffries. There was a lot of words there, but I take it as a no, that there isn't a provision in the contract for if these savings are not identified. So we have a situation where PwC will be getting paid £800,000 for 22 weeks' work to identify the 5 million of the 18 million savings required. And if they do not deliver the savings required, and what you're saying is there's nothing we can do about it. So really we're paying them without guarantee of results. Is that correct?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kerrin, for your supplementary. As I've just said, there's considerable reputational damage to PwC if the savings don't actually work. What we've decided to do is to employ this company to look at the savings, to create the business cases, to actually look in what are the consequences of these savings that we're making, and ensure that they are deliverable, and we are going to monitor them to make sure that we are delivering them. So I'm not quite sure how much more reassurance you need. They are providing us with some excellent work, some work that we can continue, and they're allowing the existing staff that we've got, the upskilling, finding leaders of the future, and by that additional training for the people that we've got here, we'll retain those staff. So we'll have good staff that will be able to help us in future budgets.
Thank you, Leader. I'll now take questions to portfolio holders. Question 1 from Councillor Worrell to Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you please provide the Chamber and residents with an update on the Thames Side building?
Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Worrell, for your question. As members will be aware, and residents, there was a Cabinet authorised consultation on the relocation of the library and the museum in March this year. Officers have been working closely with Department of Culture, Media and Sport to draw up some consultation plans with architects, which are hopefully coming forward. I've seen some early plans. It looks quite exciting. Some of the new opportunities of what we have will be relocated to the civic offices. At the same time, most importantly, there was a consultation being put forward for delivery of cultural activities and events both in Grays and across the wider borough. It's what's really important, I think we need to have a real conversation, is making sure Grays never becomes, and across the borough, there's no black spot in culture. It's really important. The one thing that is part of my portfolio is making sure delivery of arts and culture. As a point, this followed me all the way to Southend last week, where I was fielding conversations over dinner about the Thames Side and about our cultural provision, and making sure in Grays and in Thurrock there is a really good cultural offer on play. And at the moment, the Thames Side has got some amazing groups operating out of it. I spoke to Councillor Fish's motion when he brought it to council about some of the great work young producers do, and it's really, really important we don't lose that. Just as a wider update about in terms of what's going on with the building, conversations are still ongoing, both with Thurrock Lifestyle Solutions and Thurrock International Celebration of Culture. Officers met with them earlier this month. There will be further meetings going ahead in the new year, I understand. I think they're both on about their interest of actually taking over the building. Some of the things, there's details, and those works are still ongoing, and I'm making sure officers keep me updated while I'm not overall the decision on the building, is making sure that the services and the provision of what is actually provided there falls with me. In the meanwhile, though, I really do wish the theatre the best panto season it can have, with Jack and the Beanstalk on. Picked up on that, a bit too late on my head being too tired. Nonetheless, I'm really looking forward to it. As well, in the Thameside Theatre, the Christmas exhibition is coming ahead. I'm hoping to host the World War II committee, looking at some of the options to make sure our volunteers can go in and actually see the exhibition. There's lots of stuff exciting going on. We've got bookings open till March for the theatre, and I've scrolled through the website today, and I've seen they've already got all the events listed going on. So I'm more than welcome if there's anything to follow up on, but I'm making sure officers do keep me informed, because the most important thing is that the delivery of arts and culture and those cultural services in our borough, and we don't lose them.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. I was just going to say, Councillor Cockshaw, when you were speaking, if you can have the mic slightly nearer you, because it's a little different to hear. Same with you, Councillor Worrell. Thank you, Councillor Worrell.
I'm only small, Madam Mayor. It's right in my face. Thanks for your response, Councillor Coxall. And there is no swerveball to this question. I've brought it here tonight because people know that I'm absolutely passionate about the Thameside Theatre. And it's been a while since we've spoke about it in this chamber, so I just like to keep it fresh so that it doesn't get put to one side. And one thing that I really welcome is that, you know, there's been a decision to make sure that Thameside's not going to close. It's been taken off the table for the budget this year. So thank you very much. I personally am thanking you, and I'm sure that the residents out there are also personally going to be thanking you for making sure that that came off of the list for closures. So thank you so much, because we can't forget that the biggest demonstration this council's ever seen was those people out there that demonstrated to keep that. And they'll never, and I don't believe that there's one of the 49 in this chamber that wants to see it. So we must work together to make that happen. So thank you so much for, you know, it's nice, and, you know, maybe we'll even bump into each other at a performance there. That would be amazing too. So my question is, for the last, we've had 10 years, backwards and forwards, I think Councillor Snell led a piece of work on it. It's always been that the Thameside needs £18 million worth of work. It never goes up, it never goes down. It's always £18 million. So, and in the Cabinet, so this is what raised it to me, was I looked at the Cabinet meeting for March, where it was said that your dad was the leader at the time, Councillor Mark Coxall, and he promised to bring and make it more transparent the whole budgets for how we've got to that £18 million, because for officers and the Thameside and TIC to be able to do that piece of work, they need to know where that money is and what it is, because they can bid for money that we can't bid for. Councils are strapped for where they can bid. So by working together, and you know, I'm really heartened, you know, at the moment with this, that we can save that. So could you please endeavour to have that piece of work done? It does say that it will come back to corporate. So can you just, like, get your officers to do that bit of work and send it back to corporate, so that when they do meet with the TIC and the group that want to take it over, they go there armed with the paperwork to say this is what it is, because it's like a 30-year plan. We just need to get it sorted and handed over so that we don't have to have these conversations anymore. So just to commission that piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor. Next time, Councillor Cockshaw, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've now adjusted my microphone. Just to agree, just to caveat, I know what I say, it's the provision of arts and culture. I will have a conversation with officers from Place and my cabinet member, who my colleague, who is its portfolio it does fall under, but definitely will really, I think it's important to make sure that is transparent, that cost. Obviously, we can't keep saying 18 million, 18 million, 18 million. Things change, interest rates change, costs change, and I completely appreciate that. We want to be open and transparent. That's the point of the administration, and even the previous administration, the one I led under my father, I think it's really important we have that conversation with groups. We're open. Officers are meeting with them regularly. I've double checked. I asked for meeting dates. When did meetings happen today? I asked for that, and I think it's really important we keep that conversation open. At the end of the day, it's making sure we don't lose our arts and culture here. And that's the bit that's the heart for me. So if we proceed, we want to move, we want to have all conversations, we just do not want to lose that provision at all.
Councillor Worrell, do you want a supplementary question?
It is a question, absolutely is a question, Madam Mayor. So you started off your presentation with the library consultation is going to take place. And I'd just like to put it on record that I am worried that, you know, the library moving out, the museum moving out, we've got more service charges coming in, which will, you know, hit the theatre, the intake, and for anybody else. The last lot of service charges did hit the theatre, so that we've got like local groups and dance people that can no longer afford that. I just worry that with everything, we should look at, is the library in the right place? Should it, you know, so the consultation should be, it's not a definite to move it, or does it belong there? And ask the community, do they want a new one in the civic offices, or are they quite happy with it being there? Because we're here by the grace of the residents out there, so we must listen to the direction, and you only get out of a consultation the questions that you ask. So just make sure that you ask the residents if they want the library moved here, or do they want it left in the theatre.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Worrell, for your supplementary. I would like to put on record, I think the plans we've got for the move of the library is really exciting with the museum. It provides it the space it needs as well for the museum. Most importantly, we've got some fantastic artefacts. 25,000 years of borough history. We've got thousands and tens of thousands of artefacts that at the moment we can't display. I think it's really important that people actually do remember and look back and can see some of the borough's history. I had a point today about East Tilbury and some of the war memorials, which I was quite delighted to be able to respond to, mainly out of conversations both with councillors, local residents, but and also our museum service. I think there's, as I say, the plans are coming forward. I would like to reassure you, as its library moves are open to statutory consultation. That is the most important thing. It's set out by law, and DCMS have been working with us very closely. There is always questions about the distance, what the move's like. At the same time, though, we're making sure the plans that we've got with the architects are being published at the same time, so residents can see a move and actually what is being proposed. It's £1.2 million in the capital programme to do this. And I think there's a really, really exciting opportunity, but it's really important residents play their part in the consultation.
Thank you. We'll now come to Councillor Watson. To Councillor George Cockshaw again. Councillor Watson, please read out your question as set out on page 132 of the agenda, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Purfleet-on-Thames Health Centre is managed by the Healthcare Resources Group. They have implemented a new policy regarding requiring patients to schedule appointment via emails. Could the portfolio holder provide details on the consultation that took place with the residents of Purfleet-on-Thames? Because I've got some quite upset residents right now, given that the effect took place on November the 6th. Thank you.
Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Watson, for your question. I appreciate actually you brought this to my attention and actually some of the direction of officers. Once that, I will just caveat to say it is an operational matter for our primary care contractor, which is part of the falls under the NHS. Thurrock Council isn't responsible for commissioning primary care or its issues, either service quality. They are responsibilities of Mid and South Essex Integrated Care Board. However, that doesn't take away the part that we need to challenge them on these things. I'm shocked that for patients requiring appointments, they're having to go to email. I would be more than happy to provide you with the contact details to the appropriate people in terms of either go through the Alliance or straight if you want to go to the ICB. I'm more than happy as well to write a joint letter with you as a ward member to say that we're really disappointed and have got some serious concerns about this. I may also direct you to the Health and Wellbeing Over and Scrutiny Committee, which may be chaired by Councillor Hooper, who may be able to raise the questions there and directly challenge it. Equally, I'm more than happy to raise it as well at the Health and Wellbeing Board. I think it's completely inappropriate that patients are expected to drop an email to book an appointment. That doesn't make the service accessible at all. Some of these residents may not actually have access to emails and therefore be completely excluded from actually getting the healthcare they need.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, do you want to propose a supplementary, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. The residents actually have to go on the website to fill out a form to actually get an appointment. So a lot of my residents they can't do that. So one of the things that would be really grateful for you to also try and influence and help is the rationale behind the reduction of the original GP's availability from 4 days a week to now 2, and that the replacement is a nurse that does triage who does not pose the qualifications that's needed as a GP. So can I get your commitment that you will also go forward with health wellbeing or influence with the chair to make sure that this is also addressed, because I think it's very unfair and unreasonable that my residents have got to go online and also have 2 days a week with a GP if and when they can get it. Thank you.
Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Watson, for your supplementary. No, the fact that it's an online form makes it slightly even worse, because I've tried to use some of these online forms before and they do not work at times. I'd just like to say that definitely one of the key things I've been trying to do is actually, at the end of the day, I always, in my view, take politics out of health. We are here to actually deliver better healthcare outcomes for our residents. We shouldn't be bickering over left, right and centre. I'd like to actually just, I'm sure as many members and actually the public well and truly really do know, Thurrock does actually suffer from being an under-provision of GPs, and it is shockingly it's low. It's been conversations going on for years and years and years about how do we do this. I know we've got 2 fellowship GPs now started in the borough. There's a pipeline for another 3 more coming, if my figures are up to date. That process has started, and these fellowships are fully qualified as GPs, while at the same time they're going to be spending time training to specialise. I think it is one of the things that's always on my radar. It's one of the things I do always want to raise. I don't want to see any service leaving Thurrock. I don't want to see residents struggling equally. I know we've got a motion about blood tests later this evening, which I'm looking forward to supporting. I think it's really important that we have that conversation, because at the end of the day, it's healthcare for our residents, and we're all on the same side. We all want to make sure they're actually able to access it.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. Councillor Watson, no. Thank you. Question 3 now from Councillor Polly to Councillor Carter. Councillor Polly, please read out your question as set out on page 132 of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the portfolio holder please inform the Chamber, how does Thurrock compare with its statistical neighbours with regard to the number of educational health care plans in place to support our young people?
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Polly, for your question. At present, 5% of our pupils have an EHCP. This is above our statistical neighbours, who are at 4.12%, the national average of 4.3%, and our regional area, the east of England, is at 4.1%.
Councillor Polly.
Thank you for your reply, Councillor Carter. Given the success of our special educational needs facilities such as Beacon Hill and Treetops Academies, what extra provision would we be able to provide for our ASCs and neurodivergent population?
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Polly, for your supplementary, and thank you as well for always championing this issue, whether it's here in the Chamber or in private. I know you've spoken to many other portfolio holders about this in various other sectors as well, so thank you for that. I'm very happy to say that this provision has expanded, working hand in hand with Treetops Academy Trust, to enable the agreement to open Treetops Free School on the same campus to significantly increase the availability of spaces for pupils whose needs fall under the category of autism spectrum condition. Interim funding and building arrangements were put in place by the council to enable early access for more pupils to be placed. The free school new building opened for new pupils in 2022 and enabled additional capacity of 112 pupils, which increased to 147 in 2023. Furthermore, Treetops has put in place arrangements to ensure there are places for 318 pupils in the school in 2023, which is significantly larger than the planned roll of 290 when originally opened. This council supports and funds an outreach programme of staff from Treetop School to support children with ASC who attend mainstream schools across the borough to ensure their needs are being appropriately met in these schools. Thurrock opened 2 new bases for primary age children in 22 to 23 at Stifford Clays and Aveley Primary, both of which led to an increase of 20 places in the borough. This is addition to the 10 places in Lansdowne Primary School. The council consulted with all primary schools regarding the establishment of resources bases for 23 to 24. I'm happy to say 3 additional primary resource bases have been agreed. These are Deanholm Primary School with 10 places opening in January 24, Arthur Brugler, 10 places planned opening in summer 24, Tilbury Primary School, 10 places with a date opening to be confirmed after a significant building programme. Finally, in regards to secondary provision, the council is currently consulting with secondary schools for the establishment of a new secondary provision for pupils with ASC for up to 20 places. This will require additional building capacity and the projected opening date would be in 24 to 25.
Thank you. Councillor Polly, do you want to... Thank you. Question 4, Councillor Watson to Councillor Johnson. Councillor Watson, please read out your question set out on page 132. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would Councillor Johnson please inform... Sorry, I was reading her question. Your question. Yeah, there you go. Just get it again. Could Councillor Johnson provide clarification on whether the proposed housing developments on the garage sites at Chadwell St Mary's, Broxburn, that's in the Bellas Ward, and also in Corringham Garage are to be constructed by the HRA for council housing?
Councillor Johnson, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. I can categorically say that the development of those garage sites, Vigrans Way, Chadwell St Mary, Broxburn Drive and Lyndhurst Drive, which I think covers all what you said, are certainly planned to be constructed within the council's HRA, with those homes being made available for affordable rent and allocated in line with the council's policy. I will add a point of caution that these proposals are subject to agreement by His Majesty's Treasury of a special case to allow councils in our position to go forward. But standing here in front of you today, I can say yes, they are categorically down for affordable housing.
Councillor Watson, would you like to propose a supplementary question?
Thank you. Currently, we're not allowed to borrow any more money. So I'll be very interested where we will actually get the borrowing to actually do the council homes. So that would be really good if you can answer that. The other thing as well that is on my mind as well is that on planning committee, we put these sites through on the basis they were HRA and they were going to be for council homes. And if they're not, and they go to sell, like with planning application, that's very disingenuous towards the planning committee. So can you give us elaborate if we will actually get the money to actually do this? Thank you.
Councillor Johnson, would you respond?
I'll start from the second part first. I totally agree with you. If these sites, if we do not, we're not allowed to borrow the money, which I really cannot say whether we are or not. That's totally out of my hands. The business case has gone forward. I would certainly not be in favour of these sites being built for anything other than council housing. That's probably the only assurance I can give you, but I will give you that here, that if for some reason we can't, we have got priorities. I mean, you know, with Black Shots and Teviot Avenue, they're the places where we really need to do something because there are people in properties that, you know, are not fit for purpose. So I think those ones are the ones that we really need to get done. But as far as these are concerned, should we not be allowed to borrow the money, I certainly, as portfolio holder, would not be in favour of them building anything other than council homes. That's the most I can give you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Watson? No? No. I am minded that we've only got another 5 minutes and we've got another 2 questions. So can we make, rather than, you know, can we actually ask questions rather than pontificate? And let's get through the next 2 questions. Councillor Kent to Councillor Snell. Can you read out your question? Thank you, Councillor Kent.
What percentage of this year's council's revenue budget will be spent servicing the council's debt?
Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. The percentage for this year is 105.89%. This will reduce in future years, and it's currently under review as we bring together the various financial work streams in preparation for the budget and the MTFS.
Thank you. Councillor Kent. Thank you. Last question. Question 6, Councillor Kent to Councillor Snell.
What was the level of Government Revenue Support Grant, the RSG, paid to Thurrock Council for the financial years of 2010-2011 and 2023-2024?
Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. I don't have the figures going back as far as 2010 because that was the formula grant, and it wasn't the same sort of set of circumstances as the revenue support grant. But what I can do is go back to 2014-15, which I think probably gets to the thrust of your question, where in 2014-15 we received 35.685 million, and in 2023-24 we are receiving 7.967.
Sorry, Councillor Kent.
So if we look back at the budget paper for 2010-2011, the RSG was reported, and at that point it was 59.765 million. So something like an 86% drop in revenue support grant in that time. Just reflecting on what Councillor Howden was saying yesterday, we know that the model of local government finance is broken. We've seen Nottingham City Council today declaring Section 114 as a statement. Will the portfolio holder join with me in writing to government to ask for a full review of local government finance to both help this authority but to stop other authorities from ending up declaring effective bankruptcy?
Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kent. I think it's become a hot topic recently. I think there's probably not a council in the land that isn't talking about exactly this. I know Councillor Howden has been speaking about it for quite some time now, and frankly, I think he spoke some very pertinent words earlier. So yes, I think I will concede with Councillor Kent. I will join with him to write that letter. Thank you.
Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, I am grateful for that, and will draft that letter over the next couple of days and send it to the portfolio holder for joint signature.
Thank you, Councillor Kent, and it's nice to see you all working together. Reports from members representing the council on outside bodies. Does any member who represents the council on outside bodies wish to present a report? Item 16, these are listed in the agenda, the minutes of the committees. Does anyone want to say anything? No? Great. Item 17, motion updates. This report can be found on page 133 of the agenda and is information on the status of your motions. Councillor Redsill, was there something you wanted to speak about?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the motion was I put forward on the 25th of October, and it's 4 weeks, we had a really good debate that night, and I've heard nothing at all. So it just would be nice to get some feedback on the task and finish group being set up. I don't mind if it comes in January, but I think I should have had some feedback in some way, shape or form. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and the updated report was on page 133, but as Councillor Redsill had said, her one hadn't been. Excuse me over there. Shh. Thank you. Sorry, you throw me in talking. Right, we've now got... Councillor Spate, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Thank you, yes. I share the concern of Councillor Redsill, and indeed we spoke last evening about the whole process of monitoring motions. I think we've got something of an elephant's graveyard somewhere in Thurrock where motions tend to disappear and are never seen again. And I would just ask that we find a way to present motions in a better format than we're doing it, because I've got a couple of motions that I proposed. They disappeared, and then it came back and a bit of action was added in because it was Mr. Bradbury who'd done something in relation to it. It's very hit and miss. And at the end of the day, motions from this chamber are really important. Some of them I do accept are spurious, they may be political, whatever, but there are other occasions when there are really good motions, and it is the will of elected members. And this is across, I'm sure there are as many people on the other side who put motions and they wonder what's happened to them. They tend to drop out of sight. I know it says 3 months and whatever, but I really would like, and maybe it's something we look at in the Constitution Working Group, but I know we've got great IT now, we've got some innovative people working in IT. Maybe we could come up with a much better system of logging where we are with motions, keeping a historic record of them, rather than it being hit and miss whether they appear, whether we, I actually went through every motion since May, this morning before I came to today's meeting. And as I say, some were there 1 month and then they came back, then disappeared the next month and then they came back in. It's very, very difficult for us to keep track. And this is democracy that we're talking about.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Right, we're now going to move forward to the motion by Councillor Hooper. Do you wish to propose and then speak about your motion as printed on page 135 of the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It really is difficult to speak into these mics when you're 6'3". Right. The people of Thurrock are waiting up to 8 weeks to get an appointment for a blood test. This is entirely unacceptable. So Thurrock Council call on Mid and South Essex Foundation Trust to take whatever action necessary to hold pathology first to account for their failure of blood testing in Thurrock and provide a reasonable service.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Is this motion seconded? Do you wish now to speak?
Yes, Mayor. No. Wish to refer...
Are you sure?
Yes,
what do you want to do?
My right to speak later.
You'll reserve your right to speak. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise this evening in full support of this motion to call on Mid and South Essex Foundation Trust to hold pathology first to account for the shocking 6 to 8 weeks wait they are imposing on residents of Thurrock to get a blood test. Blood tests are a vital tool for doctors to ensure patients are receiving the right treatment, and any delay could cause unnecessary prolonged pain and the necessity of their condition getting worse. I call on all members here today to get behind this motion to send a message to Mid and South Essex Foundation Trust. They need to be holding pathology first to account for the poor service they are providing our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Polly.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Hooper, for bringing this motion to Council. A bit like Councillor Redsall's motion last month, there's not a ward in the borough that isn't affected by this, and it is a recurring item on HOSC, and we have endeavoured to use both the HOSC process, and I am appointed as a non-executive director governor, and we have used the mechanism there to ask the governor's question for a detailed report about how many actual appointments are being provided at the outlets within Thurrock. One of the first things that I did as a returning councillor in 2021 was to approach them for the reinstatement of blood testing in Ockenden, because there was nothing in the west of the borough. Not just in Ockenden and Bellas, but for Aveley. We're seeing changes in GP practices, as my colleague Councillor Watson has said earlier, where managed practices are choosing what services that they provide. So the ability just to go to your GP and get a blood test is no longer there. In addition to the pathology first providing the phlebotomy service and the haematology services, we also have an issue with the way that people actually apply to get an appointment, which is with the Swift Queue appointment, that is definitely offering appointments residents in our ward of Bellas, such as in Dartford and in Queen's Hospital at Romford. And not offering Ockenden or Thurrock Community Hospital as an option for blood tests. That, on the surface of it, doesn't seem to be a problem, because geographically some of these locations are closest to the resident. However, because of the way that the NHS works in silos, if they're not within the ICB area, if they're not within the primary care network, that causes absolute horrific delays on those blood results then. So having waited an inordinate amount of time for a blood test to happen, for it then, for the results either to not be processed, not get received by the GP or the even with, as we've discussed many times before, you know, our cancer patients are being quite poorly let down as well. Some of these are time critical, and this is something that you know, Councillor Spate, Councillor Hooper, all of us on HOSC have drilled down.
Councillor Polly, you're out of time.
Sorry, obviously a passion of mine. Thank you for bringing the motion. I absolutely will support it. Thank you.
Councillor Redsall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hooper. I support it 100%. I think it affects most of us in our wards everywhere. I know that Allsit has got blood testing. I was told there the other day that Allsit blood testing is owned by a French firm now. So, but I think the trouble with blood testing, it's hit and miss. You know, sometimes you get an appointment and sometimes you don't. And then there's that 8-week wait. So I think it's wrong, because people having something wrong, it leads to something else, or you have to wait for something else. So, and I think it's once you've had it done, it's the waiting process that you've got to wait afterwards. So I support it. I get many complaints from my ward, so I thank you for bringing it forward. Thank you very much.
Councillor Piccolo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Literally 5 minutes ago, I went on the Swift website to see what appointments were available in Thurrock, The best you're going to get is the 22nd of December at Allsit, or the 28th at Thurrock Community Hospital, or South Ockenden has actually come up, and it's the 9th of January. What I did then do is look at what else was available in the local area, but not in Thurrock. King George Hospital at Ilford, 30th to the 11th, Chelmsford, 11th to the 12th, Broomfield, the 30th of November, Malden, the 6th to the 12th. I can go on. They're all within about a week or 10 days at the most. I can't see, for whatever reason, that Basildon can't, or Swift can't, achieve the same thing in Thurrock. We're getting a diabolical service, and it needs to be sorted. And I'm someone that's actually had to use the service quite a few times in the last year because of health problems.
Councillor Carter. Sorry, I thought you wanted to speak. Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hooper, for bringing this to full council. I know this has been early days before I was at Cabinet. Councillor Polly worked hard to reinstate them, the blood test hit in South Ockenden, and I know it's been a really big priority for you and your committee to actually bring this matter really to the forefront of the conversation. It is shocking. It feels like when people ask, I often feel like saying Thurrock gets shafted again. It's again another show that actually Thurrock residents are not getting the best healthcare that they do actually deserve. From personal experience, my other half, we ended up having to go down. She went at 7 a.m. to start queuing for a walking service to be one of the lucky 25. That is, for a health problem which actually could have put her in a coma, it's completely inappropriate that you're expecting someone at 7 a.m. to be queuing. I'm really pleased and I'm really glad it's getting full support from all across the chamber. It is shocking. It's long running. It's been going on for so long. The service has been run down for Thurrock residents. I'm really pleased that the council is actually, we're all going to come together and actually hold our partners to account to actually deliver a service that our residents deserve.
Councillor Manuel.
I'd like to support the motion as well, because at least personally for me, I was recently diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and one of the best ways that they can actually find out whether you have it or not is a blood test. And whilst I'm lucky enough that I haven't had to wait 8 weeks, I can only imagine what other residents who are in a similar position to me might be going through. So I think it's really important that we kind of put pressure on the relevant actors to make sure that they're delivering the service that residents of Thurrock deserve, because there are a lot of people who are probably going through very serious and very painful conditions right now. And without these blood tests, there's just a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unnecessary pain and stress, mentally, physically, emotionally. So yeah, 100% support the motion, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it.
Thank you. Councillor Kent. Councillor John Kent.
Madam Mayor, it's clear that once again Thurrock residents are getting a raw deal. Eight weeks to wait for a blood test is just unconscionable, and frankly it doesn't have to be like this. What we're seeing, I think, is the inevitable consequence of privatisation of the NHS. And Madam Mayor, I have to say that one of the answers should be in the hands of the community, not of the council but of the community. To get a level 3 qualification to be a phlebotomist costs about 500 quid. We should be encouraging social enterprises out there to break the monopoly that Phlebotomy First currently have and set up our own blood testing organisations. You know, what we know when we speak to people that are working in the service here in Thurrock is that they don't have enough staff, they're not being well enough paid, they're not allowed to take breaks when they should, they're not being properly treated by the management of the service. Something has to give. So, you know, clearly I welcome the motion and we'll be supporting it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Spillman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's not just about blood tests, is it, as well? And this is what Councillor Polly's referred to as well. It's about diagnostics as well. So, and I'll take one point that John Kent says, that it's not always about private provision in the NHS, because in terms of having a lot of exploratory work, if you've got a condition, some of the referrals now to private provision are so fast, it's incredible. But what you wait for is the diagnostics to come back. So you can report a serious problem, get a referral, be in a private provision within about a week or 2 weeks if it's a serious condition, where they do all the major work. You know, you actually get some form of surgery, and then it takes 3 months for somebody to get round to look at that biopsy. That for me is just as important as blood tests as well. So it's something that we really must get a handle on.
Thank you. There's no other councillor wishing to speak on the subject. If not, I shall go to Councillor Cecil, that you just wanted to second it, and then I'll go back to Councillor Hooper to sum up his motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm very, very delighted to second Councillor Hooper's motion. I have very personal experience. My late wife was in the Premier League for blood tests, and you don't want to be in the Premier League for blood tests because you do walk straight in, because your immune system is so shot. And this was 6 years ago. Then she could go in at a moment's notice. We've lost that, and this is the disgrace. This new pathology first system is failing us awfully. My wife was able to get through sepsis, C. difficile, and all the other derived hospital infections because of this. The blood tests were available and were being done smartly within the NHS. So I don't accept your point. Within the NHS, we had a good system. We do not now. I support this motion and I hope that we get it sorted out.
Councillor Hooper, would you like to sum up on your motion, please?
Well, I did write a speech, but I don't think I need to say anything. Oh, no. I'd really like to thank councillors for their comments today and their support for this motion. And I really hope that Mid and South Essex Foundation Trust are listening to the people of Thurrock and this council to improve the blood-taking services that the people of Thurrock really do deserve. I do take note that Thurrock tend to be at the bottom end of this. As Councillor Piccolo said, you can get, in other areas, you get appointments within a week, 10 days. But Thurrock, it's weeks, and it's just so wrong. I'm glad to hear that so many councillors are in support of this motion, so I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper, and thank you for your motion. Is the motion all agreed by everybody? Agreed. Thank you. This concludes the business of councillors. Excuse me. This concludes the business of the meeting this evening, and I now declare the meeting closed. But please, can I remind you all to take home your rubbish with you or use the bins near the exit, Councillor Byrne. I would like to invite all members to join me for refreshments. I know you're very tired after last night, but it would be nice to see you all. Thank you.